have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And happy LGBT History Month. I had forgotten all about it until I got a message from Debbie Wasserman Schultz from the Democratic National Committee. I have to be reminded by her that it's LGBT History Month.
Well, unfortunately, we cannot discuss with you the first presidential debate because we're, as you know, taping before it. We'll discuss it next week while you're watching the vice presidential debate on National Coming Out Day.
And the show that we taped last week with Kate Clinton, which was very entertaining.
Yes.
Some of you didn't get to see nationally because free speech ran the wrong tape, miscoded it. But it is available on blip.tv. Just go to blip.tv, look for Gay USA, find the show we did last week. We put it up there every week.
Or you can listen to the podcast on gayusatv.org. That's an alternate way to get the show every week. And if you want to be kept apprised of information like this, write to andyhum@aol.com. That's him. Get on our mailing list. We don't bother you with a lot of stuff, but we give you updates that you need about things like this.
Right.
Meanwhile, in this week's news...
Well, California went ahead and did ban therapists from inflicting so-called reparative therapy on LGBT children, as Governor Jerry Brown signed the new bill into law, though there is going to be a constitutional challenge to that by the right wing.
And there are a couple of other laws, one that he vetoed and one that he signed, that we'll talk about too. In another historic move, the Obama administration has made explicit in writing its policy that foreign-born same-sex partners of U.S. citizens can be considered family in decisions about whether or not to deport them.
Romney advisor and general all-around monster John Bolton,
your next Secretary of State,
is the other guy with the white mustache, used an anti-gay slur to characterize President Obama's international policy.
Have you ever been mistaken for John Bolton?
Thank goodness no.
We'll show you a new public service announcement about the perils facing transgender people trying to vote.
The case of Edie Windsor, 83, the widow of Thea Spire, went before the U.S. Court of Appeals to determine whether her federal marriage rights should be upheld.
We were there. We'll give you an eyewitness account. Then we're going to enter into the debate about how you should advertise in these marriage referenda that are going on in states around the country. We'll show you, for instance, firefighters in Maine in a commercial standing up for their gay colleague for his right to marry.
The United States has granted asylum to a Mexican gay man who said he was the lover of the president-elect of Mexico for 7 years.
And you think that's strange? How about the Hong Kong businessman who is offering $65 million to the man who can win the heart of his lesbian daughter? I will be cross-dressing to get that $65 million and marry the woman.
France's president told the United Nations to end the criminalization of homosexuality.
But Pope Benedict, this is a headline, says gay people are not fully human.
Those fighting words there, Benedict. Take off that dress and, we'll duke it out. The first out lesbian to head a government is stepping down.
A cluster of cases of people with HIV dying of invasive meningitis has cropped up. Anyone with possible symptoms, which we'll go through, should seek treatment immediately. And some cities are ordering up preventive vaccines, but not New York.
And I'm going to review the Broadway production of Ibsen's Enemy of the People with Richard Thomas and Boyd Gaines.
It's supposed to be very edgy.
I liked it, if you can't stay till the end of the show. It's polemic. It's a polemic.
And at the last
liked
minute, facing a deadline, Governor Jerry Brown has finally stepped up and signed legislation passed by the California legislature to outlaw reparative therapy by licensed therapists for minor children. Now, this, any religious figure or person on the street can still offer this, but a licensed therapist can no longer in California, assuming this withstands court challenge, as of January 1st, offer reparative therapy to minor children.
Jerry Brown said there is absolutely no scientific basis for this therapy, and it's quackery.
Every mental health organization and professional and of course, LGBT activists and people across the board have said for years that this is damaging to try to change kids' sexual orientation. They have horrible methods that they use to try to do this. Right. And so they've now outlawed it, as they have outlawed electroshock therapy for minors and other practices that are damaging.
My friend George Weinberg, who wrote Society and the Healthy Homosexual, who is a therapist, said they should have done this long ago. He's been talking about it for years. Jack Drescher, who's an out gay psychiatrist, is a little nervous about this and wonders whether it will withstand a constitutional challenge, free speech and all that kind of stuff, and wonders if there's not other ways to go about trying to stop this other than in the law.
Well, the core analysis here is that this is damaging to
child abuse, they're calling it.
Yes, and therefore the state has not only a right but a responsibility to protect children from this.
So the right
you can still run off to your church.
Right.
Adults can avail themselves of this.
The right wing, to try to be fair to them, says the parents come in, the kid comes in, the kid is distressed over this, wants to change, feels very uncomfortable with their feelings, and I'm there to help them, and I have to go with the patient. I'm just saying what they're saying. I think it's child abuse too. But that is their line.
Look, I think people can decide how to live their lives. If they don't want to manifest same-sex attraction physically, they don't have to. But if someone comes in and is uncomfortable with their feelings, the therapist should at least be considering trying to make them comfortable with their feelings rather than buying into this is horrible.
Human Rights Campaign was very big on this bill, and they hope to spread it around the country, but I called New York's Pride Agenda and a couple of assembly members, but Pride Agenda would only say, we think the governor of California did a good thing. I said, I'm trying to find out whether they want to push a bill like this in New York,
other places
where we don't license as many counselors as they do.
Other jurisdictions are taking a look at this and considering whether to try to turn this into a national movement. But NORTH, the notorious National Association for the Research and Therapy of Homosexuality, which is a bunch of quack, discredited, and unaccredited therapists, Joe Nicolosi and his crowd, they are joining together with Liberty Counsel, with the legal arm of Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's crowd, to mount a legal challenge to this on the grounds of freedom of speech. But it's going to be their claim of freedom of speech versus demonstrated actual harm. And I think the courts will decide that the state has the right to make a decision that something is harmful to minors and to legislate about that.
I'd have to think about it. I mean, I'm not, in terms of how I think it'll turn out. Obviously, the California courts are fairly liberal, and but I'm not sure, and that's what is nerve-wracking about this.
I think the state regulates all sorts of stuff, and that they will have, they license the therapists in the first place. They have to make decisions about who's qualified to be a therapist. Certainly, they have the right to I think.
Okay.
My prediction. Meanwhile, Jerry Brown also signed a bill equalizing the access of lesbians and single women to fertility treatments to assure their access, because there had been some problem with that. But he vetoed a bill that was very controversial to allow multiple parents to have legal parenthood over children, expanding beyond just two parents, and that was considered, beyond the pale.
He is Governor Moonbeam no more.
I'm not sure he ever really was.
That was his old nickname.
Yeah. But in other family matters, the Obama administration, the person of Department of Homeland Security Secretary Napolitano, has put into writing something that was understood somewhat informally to be in place, which is that when they consider who gets deported, who are not U.S. citizens or have green cards or legal status, if it is someone foreign-born who is in a heterosexual couple, their marriage or that coupledom can put them at the lowest level for deportation.
Right.
They have now put in writing that same-sex couples will be considered at the same level.
Now, back in June of last year, they said you can consider ties and contributions to the community, including family relationships. And now, what they're doing now is specifically saying family relationships includes, quote unquote, long-term same-sex partners. And the LGBT groups are saying this is a small change with very large implications.
All right. Should we go to Edie Windsor?
Sure.
All right. We have been anticipating these defense of marriage cases coming before the Supreme Court, and one case that's pending for them to decide whether to take is this case of Edie Windsor versus the U.S., which
Got a picture of her there.
Which had been decided after the hearing last week, had been decided in her favor a few months ago at the U.S. District Court, and was then due on appeal to go to the Court of Appeals in the Southern District, First District?
The
Second Circuit Court of Appeals. But meanwhile, her lawyers, our side,
ACLU, Roberta Kaplan,
asked to skip that level and go directly to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has not yet decided to take the case, so they went ahead with the arguments in the Second Circuit Court of Appeals last week, the oral arguments. And so it was, you see there on the right, Roberta Kaplan, Robbie Kaplan. You've seen Edie and Robbie on this show talking about the case.
And in back of Edie was a bunch of people from Connecticut, couples, same-sex couples, who were also suing for this right. They were there to back her up.
And their case is implicated in this, too. And on the other side was Paul Clement. We got to see Paul Clement in action.
I got to talk to him. I tried to ask him a question. He said, "You can ask anything you want. I'm not going to say anything other than what I said in court."
Well, what he said in court, representing John Boehner in the House of Representatives and the bipartisan legal advisory group.
It's the House Republicans.
Yeah, fighting us on all these DOMA cases.
Your taxpayer money at work.
He cited the old Minnesota Baker v. Nelson case, which is not relevant anymore.
Which is the Minnesota couple that tried to get married in '71 that the court just didn't hear, right?
Right.
Now, he was also asked, well, look, the other side is saying federal government doesn't get involved in who gets married. It's all up to the states. Right. And he said, no. Let's go back to 1885 in the polygamy thing, where basically the United States said, you can't come into the Union unless you get rid of polygamy. So that was the United States as a federal government defining marriage as...
I think he's making the case for the federal government, for the courts to step up and grant us marriage rights.
Oh, I thought you were going to say grant polygamy. But
No. He talked about upholding traditional marriage.
He said a definition is a definition. Marriage is marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. What do you want from me?
He's also promoting this idea of uniformity. But to me, uniformity is if you have people who are legally married, you have to treat them all equally.
Right.
What DOMA does is destroy uniformity by saying we're treating some legally married people one way and other legally married people another way.
And that's why we've won all these cases except in Hawaii. We lost one of these. Now,
well, that's a local idiot who's going to be overturned. He also said the legislature should decide, not the courts, to which I say that what's the point of courts? The whole point of the question here is this law constitutional? Yes, certainly the legislature could repeal it or do anything they want, but the role of the courts is to look at a law that's been passed and say, is this constitutional or not?
And the Obama administration was in the court with this guy Dellery from the Justice Department arguing for our side now. And he was sort of asked by one of the judges, "You were in court a couple of years ago arguing against this. So what's going on?"
Yeah, he didn't have a very good answer to that. I thought he could have given a better answer, like we changed our mind.
Afterwards, talking to our lawyers, I learned that, we've been talking about this. I kind of assumed that if Edie Windsor moves down to Florida, she's going to keep all her federal rights. And they said to me, well, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis depending on the federal right. Can she take her Social Security with her, et cetera? It's not clear.
Well, it is yet to be litigated.
Well, yeah. One would think.
There was also a fun byplay with the Department of Justice lawyer, and this came up in the conversation with Clement, too, about is the LGBT community powerless, which would then make any law against us more suspect in this whole discussion of scrutiny.
Clement said, powerless? They made the President of the United States come out for it.
Yes, but here's the thing, which our side should have said. The President of the United States has an opinion, the Department of Justice has an opinion, but meanwhile they are forced to enforce this law. It is still in effect. We have not been powerful enough to overturn the law. They can talk all they want, but the law is still in place.
But the question that you just raised is about, do we have access to the system? We do, and we do lobby. And on marriage, we lose all the time. At least in referenda, we've won in several state courts and state legislatures and things like that.
We haven't even won non-discrimination laws in most
that doesn't make
states.
it. Well, wait a minute. That
or
doesn't
at
make
the
us.
federal level.
It doesn't make us powerless.
Well,
the thing about the Colorado decision, Amendment 2, was that it said not only you just don't have access to the system. You can't even lobby for this. You're not allowed to because we don't entertain that.
Absolutely. But the question legally about who is powerful and who isn't has more to do with your actual standing and the laws you get passed, not the fact that you can go into court and say, here I am.
Anyway, stay tuned to the Supreme Court.
There must have been at least a couple of hundred people in the room, a lot of
people we didn't know. We wondered if we were in the right room.
And some we did. A lot of lawyers, a lot of clerks, a lot of press, a lot of interested parties. It was very interesting to be there. Always like to be at court oral arguments. So anyway, then we move to the fact that we do have these questions of our political power, these votes that are coming up in November on these various marriage referenda in Minnesota, Maine, Maryland, and Washington. And there's a debate that has developed as these campaigns go along about, as we have seen for years, about how do you advertise on these? Do you make gay people visible, or do you use straight stand-ins to appeal to the audience better?
And I have to say, we have a horrible record. And we've used the same ads basically all the way along, where we don't feature ourselves. And I've always thought, if we're going to fight these, and I don't even think we should fight these in some cases because it's an insult to have your civil rights voted on by the majority. But if we're going to fight them, we might as well do a little education about who we are to sort of get people, more comfortable with it.
I would agree with that, and certainly what we've learned over the last 30 years is that our standing in society has improved to the extent that we are out and people do know us as human beings.
Ellen did a lot. No, she did. I mean, she did a tremendous amount.
A lot of people did.
A lot
of people did.
We've all been involved. We were involved long before Ellen. But people noticed a jump in people understanding their own sexual orientations earlier because of the whole Ellen hubbub.
All right. Well, the debate over this has become more public, and news organizations are becoming more sophisticated about this debate. And the Associated Press did a report centered mostly in Minnesota about this debate. They're debating a constitutional amendment to forbid same-sex marriage in the state. And the AP did this report on how the ads are being done.
Marriage is really important to me.
The ad shows a warm image of a Minnesota couple from the suburbs talking about the lesbian couple who moved into the neighborhood.
Taught all of us in our little suburban world.
But except for a few shots, it does not prominently feature the couple. From Minnesota to Maine, in states with marriage on the ballot, some television ads are taking stands on gay marriage. What is missing? Speaking roles for actual gay people. The people featured are straight, and that has some gay voters asking why.
I don't feel that the gay population has gained the ground that they have in acceptance in the world by not being in the forefront and hiding behind other people and having other people advocate.
Those behind the ads do not deny that people on camera advocating gay marriage legislation are straight.
Folks all over the state have been on a journey when it comes to this question of the freedom to marry for gay and lesbian couples. And our ads are meant to make sure that the people who are going to decide this campaign, decide this race on Election Day, these ads are meant to reflect who they are and to help them connect with people just like them.
They say gay voters are not their target audience. But in Minnesota, those opposing a ballot measure defining traditional marriage say stay tuned.
They're going to see a really wonderful conversation kind of open up in this state over the next 43 days. A really wonderful conversation open up, and our ads will reflect that conversation.
Alexander Zachary of Minneapolis just wishes gay people were not kept so hidden.
In my head, the only thing I can think of is that they've hired a political strategist, and they said gay people or straight people don't want to see gay people on TV. And that's the direction that they chose to go.
Used to be there wasn't even this discussion.
An image war over the airwaves, fought in 4 states with ballot measures, with gay rights groups looking to break a 32-state losing streak on the issue.
It's okay to take a second look.
Lee Powell, The Associated Press.
Well, I'm impressed that the Associated Press took on the question. Obviously, they didn't come up with any answers or really talk about polling or any of the nuances of it, but they raised the question, and we wanted to show you the full Minnesota ad that they excerpted there so you could get an idea of the full impact of this commercial.
We just had our 13th anniversary, 13 years and 3 kids. It's a commitment to forever.
Marriage is really important to me. I didn't really think a lot about same-sex marriage.
We had a gay couple live in our neighborhood. They had adopted a little son, and they were the most wonderful neighbors. It taught all of us in our little suburban world.
We did have some good discussions. In our daughter's world, her normal is so much different than ours. It didn't faze her at all.
It's okay to take a second look.
And when you do, vote no.
We have a lot of gay people on this show.
Therefore, no, I like that spot. I think it's good. I don't think it should be the only spot, but I think it's effective in a certain way.
I think people have to connect to us as human beings and say, oh, that's what they need, and look what they're being deprived of, and that kind of stuff, and you know.
Absolutely, but in the same way that Obama coming out for marriage equality gives people permission to support us, I think an ad like this gives people permission to vote against the constitutional amendment. But here's a different approach in Maine that is more integrated and overt with us.
For 16 years, and combined, the 4 of us here have over 30 years of experience.
These guys are all straight, so when I joined the department, I wondered how a brotherhood so tight like that would be accepting of someone who's gay.
The brotherhood that we have is not the straight fireman's brotherhood, it's the fireman's brotherhood.
If a guy works hard and does his job, I'm not going to judge him, and we're not going to judge him either.
When we clear the call, I get to go home to my wife. The guys I work with should be able to marry the person they love. We're voting yes on 1.
I am too. Yes. That's good.
Well, I like that. That is the integrated approach, and it makes the case for people knowing us and for us being out. And
in a fire department, no less, because we have about like 5 out firefighters in the city of New York.
Well,
and it's a tough environment.
In Maine, they're voting affirmatively for marriage, as opposed to Minnesota, where we're trying to get people to vote against a constitutional amendment. And the polls are very good in Maine at the moment. We'll see where that ends up.
Yeah.
But
my friend Ann is very skeptical of the polls.
Yeah, but when they're a 20-point difference, I feel a little better. Now, we also seem to be doing well in the polls in Washington State, which is also a vote to affirm the legislature's legalization of same-sex marriage.
As in Maryland.
But this, again, from Washington State, is an independent group putting together a plea for straight allies to work with LGBT people for marriage equality.
I've known Ishan for 6 years and have really noticed a positive change in his life after meeting Sean. They have something very special, and I believe that they deserve the right to be married just like anyone.
Hello, I'm State Senator Ed Murray. And I'm Michael Shiosaki. Ed and I have been together in a committed relationship for 21 years.
This year, the legislature passed and the governor signed a bill that would allow us and families like us around the state to be able to marry. The far right is launching an aggressive campaign to try and prevent that from happening. We need your help, if you're gay or if you're straight. If we're going to win this, we need your help. You can make the difference. You can make sure that all families in Washington state will be able to marry. Thank you.
You know, I'm going to vote yes on referendum 74 because to me, marriage is a basic right that all human beings should have. I was married for 23 years to the love of my life, and he died 6 years ago. And I valued that marriage more than anything. And I would think that two people that truly love each other and are committed to each other should also deserve the right to call that a marriage. And that's why I'll be voting yes on referendum 74.
In the public at large, we're going to rely on that same dynamic. We have to have the support of our straight allies in large numbers to ensure that Washington becomes the first state in the history of the country where the voters approve marriage equality at the ballot box.
These are my friends, and I support their right to love and to marry one another because we're all guaranteed equality under the law, and I see no reason why they shouldn't have the same rights as the rest of us.
You know, for the longest time, I was afraid to come out and publicly support marriage equality, mainly because I thought that my friends and my family might think of me differently. But ever since I came out and publicly supported it, I have had nothing but positive reactions, and if anything, I've been able to change people's minds and let them know and get them to know that this is the right thing to do. I would encourage every straight ally to come out and publicly endorse marriage equality.
My name is Lauren.
My name is Daniel.
My name is Alvin.
My name is Donnelly.
My name is Drew.
I'm a straight ally, and I approve referendum 74.
We're all in this together.
I think it's all good. Now for those of you glued to the screen, we put up some chyrons of the websites for these various marriage efforts, but I want to repeat some of these for you. To see more of these ads, to find out more about what's going on in each of these states.
Get involved in the campaigns.
For Maine, the website is mainersunited.org, M-A-I-N-E-R-S, mainersunited.org. For Minnesota, it's mnunited.org, as in Minnesota, mnunited.org. For Washington State, it's WashingtonUnitedForMarriage.org, WashingtonUnitedForMarriage.org. And Maryland, which is the one we didn't show you, is Marylanders for MarriageEquality.org. Now, you can also probably just Google, Maryland, same-sex marriage, Maine, same-sex marriage.
You don't have to spell
Minnesota,
it right. It comes up.
Washington.
Google is good that way.
Very smart. But it's an interesting question. Now, meanwhile, in news around this, the Supreme Court did make a decision. It hasn't taken the DOMA cases yet, but it rejected the National Organization for Marriage's appeal of a Maine order for them to disclose their donors in one of these races 3 years ago.
Do you know what they said in response to this?
What?
Well, that applies to 2009, not 2012.
So we're not disclosing anything for this year.
Are you kidding? I talked to this Brian Brown this week. What did I talk to him about? Oh, about the results of the New York elections. He is a tenacious pit bull, totally self-assured.
Of course
he is. I wish when I talk to our people that they weren't so, Well,
believe me, the Brian Browns of this world consider our people tenacious on our issues. We're not giving an inch either.
Well, anyway. Well, in the New York, one of the things I learned this week, and that we lost one of these Republican primaries
for state
Senate in New York, a guy who voted for same-sex marriage. They alone, National Organization for Marriage, threw $250,000 in ads and robocalls just at that one little race where maybe 9,000 people voted.
And they're not telling us where the money came from.
Exactly,
either.
they don't have to.
But
they do. But they do have to tell us who did it in 2009.
Have you seen their new website?
No. I have. But...
Keep the Republic and Marriage, the acronym of which is CRAM. And it's for people, they say, who want to be public about their support for traditional marriage, and they've got like 125 people signed on. Well, including Brian Brown and Maggie Gallagher and all the usual suspects.
We threw a lot of money at those elections in New York, but they have a constituency in Republican primaries, and we don't.
Of course.
All right. Now, in New York, this is actually in New York City, I don't know if this is a first, but there was a custody case, a lesbian couple, and they awarded it to the child to the non-biological mother. Now,
it's not a first.
It's not a first time that they've done that?
I mean, I don't know about family court in New York,
okay.
But it's certainly, it's a common question when same-sex couples split up, especially lesbian couples.
Right.
There is sometimes a custody battle, and this whole Vermont couple, the custody and visitation, the bio mom claiming that the other one is
they had joint custody, but one of them fled
to Nicaragua.
Yes.
Well, no Nicaragua in this case yet, but the court decided that the adoptive mom was a better mother and that the bio mom was flaky.
More like a friend to the child than a mother.
No rules. So the adoptive mom has custody. Congratulations to MSNBC anchor Thomas Roberts and his longtime partner Patrick Dabner. They got married in a very fancy ceremony.
Yep. Now, speaking of weddings and marriage pictures and things like that, Republicans right-wing Republicans running around the country often take wedding photos off the internet and then put a background of their own state in it. Behind it and say, this is the values of my opponent. He supports this. And so one of the couples who were from New Jersey who were used in a
same-sex
male
couple.
Yeah, Brian Edwards and Tom Privateri are suing over this because they, their image was appropriated.
Yeah. The City Council in Austin, Texas, passed a resolution endorsing same-sex marriage and condemning the Defense of Marriage Act. Now, they've always been a island of liberalism in the state of Texas. It's funny that they're the state capital.
Well, a bunch of cities.
Nice to hear from them.
Yep.
All right.
They got a lesbian mayor down in Houston.
Yes, they do. That's not Austin.
Right.
All right, other news. Political news. The Log Cabin Republicans, speaking of Republicans, have put out their first endorsement list. They endorsed Scott Brown for re-election as senator from Massachusetts and 19 representatives.
Scott Brown, whose favorite justice is Antonin Scalia, he said in the debate the other day.
That was funny. He got booed for that.
He got flustered when he was asked. But he came up with one name.
As you know. Now he came up with several. He went on to others. Kennedy, Sotomayor, he cited.
He liked her too?
Yes, he did. And Justice Roberts, he listed them all. But I saw the clip. I like to give the log cabins a little leeway in optimistic hope that they can change the Republican Party, but I find it so discouraging when they actually come out and do these endorsements of people who are terrible.
This guy, Tassay, who's the out gay guy running in Massachusetts, he's running against a guy who obviously has been, Tierney, who's got a lot of corruption issues and things like that. But you have to ask the question, do you want to contribute to a Republican majority that is oppressing us? It's a problem. The party is a problem.
I'm all for them changing the party and making progress.
It is changing. It's getting worse.
Well, you don't want them to actually elect people.
And
meanwhile, the Catholic Archbishop of Omaha is telling pastors that they can go ahead and help the campaign to repeal the city's Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act. Who are these people?
And by the time you watch this, you will know the degree to which the celebration of the welcoming of the Archbishop of San Francisco, who was the big supporter of Proposition 8, will have been disrupted. Sister Zsa Glamour was deciding on how best to respond at press time.
Well, the whole Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence were planning to show up on October 4th. And have you seen these ads that are being run by the Catholic group Courage?
No, that's the group that tries to get us to stop being gay.
Yeah. We say no to same-sex marriage, but yes to you.
What the hell does that mean?
It goes on. It's this whole litany of being against everything we are and stand for, but they want us to show up and...
Well, if you're out there in California, we hope you vote no on Proposition 32. This is about trying to stop unions from deducting dues for their members to use in political purposes. This is all being run by the Koch brothers and things like that. Folks,
because they want only their money in campaigns.
And why it's an LGBT issue is they provide the biggest money in our campaigns, are a lot of these statewide campaigns.
And workers.
And workers. If it wasn't for the labor movement, and I am a union man myself.
You may have been following, as the campaign goes on, all this discussion about these new photo ID laws in various states and the difficulties with people actually being allowed to vote and the attempts to suppress the vote and the phony registration papers that are turning up in Florida and elsewhere.
It's the only way Obama can lose.
But one of the problems that hasn't been discussed is the problem that transgender people have voting. And the Williams Institute at LA, at the UCLA Law School, says that there may be as many as 25,000. That sounds even low to me. People disenfranchised because their photo ID does not match their gender presentation or their name or their gender markers on their ID or whatever. It becomes very complex. So the National Center for Transgender Equality has put together a new campaign to encourage transgender people to check and make sure that their ID is in order so that they will be able to vote.
The campaign is called votingwhiletrans.org.
And
my name is Janet Mock, and I vote.
I'm Charles, and I vote.
My name is Mara Kiesling, and I vote.
I'm Laverne Cox, and I vote.
My name is Ignacio Rivera, and I vote.
I'm Kit Yan, and I vote.
Voting while trans means that some of us are told we aren't who we say we are.
Because of the way we look.
Voting while trans means that some of us are gawked at by poll workers. Voting while trans means that some of us are almost always asked
to give our real name.
Real names. Our real name. Voting while trans means
getting the information you need to protect your right to vote.
This election, over 25,000 transgender people could lose their right to vote.
25,000 transgender people could lose their right to vote.
And even if you've never had a problem voting before,
check your voter registration information and make sure your name and address match your current ID.
And if you can, update your ID photo and gender marker now.
We all have a right to vote no matter who we are.
So protect your right to vote. Learn more at votingwhiletrans.org.
Yeah.
So please make sure that your voter identification papers, registration, whatever, are in order so that your vote can be counted.
Even if you are not transgender, make sure you got whatever ID is necessary. These are bad laws. They're being challenged in the courts, but we don't always win the challenges.
Exactly.
You may have to show up with a photo ID, so get one.
And if you're in a state that allows early voting, you might want to start the process now, just to make sure that you won't be kept from voting.
Even before the debates.
Assuming you know who you're voting for. Meanwhile, controversy continues in Massachusetts over the prisoner who has been granted by the courts the right to have state-financed sex reassignment surgery while she is in prison. Both Senate candidates have railed against this.
Scott Brown and Elizabeth Warren, on a sour note.
And the governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, has announced that the state will appeal this decision and try not to be responsible for this. And Barney Frank has now spoken up and said that he's against this.
The problem, of course, is, and people have to understand this, when you're in prison, you don't have access to the wide world of, options for your health. And, they've got to take care of things that, yes, might not be taken care of outside, that you wouldn't be entitled to. Unless, of course, you follow Romney's advice, go to the emergency room.
Or ask your parents to pay for it. But here's what I think is really not well understood. People regard this as cosmetic surgery. And if you read the court's opinion on this case, you see how desperately this is necessary for this woman's health, physical, mental, whatever. This is not about elective surgery.
Sure.
This is not about something frivolous. This is about a basic health need, and basic health needs are supposed to be taken care of by the
It's not
state.
like going in and getting breast augmentation surgery or penis enlargement or something like that. Well, I'm just saying, we were talking about it earlier because that ends up in our spam box a lot. All right, speaking of anyway,
Always classy.
Romney, one of his surrogates is, and his big foreign policy advisor is John Bolton, the former UN ambassador under George Bush. Yeah, George W. Bush.
He tried to make him Secretary of State and couldn't get him confirmed.
Right.
And he
he's
ended up as
on
the UN
television
ambassador.
talking about Libya and Benghazi and all that stuff, and he calls Obama's foreign policy limp-wristed. Now, that only means one thing to me, and it's disgraceful talk, and I don't hear any condemnations coming from the Republican side.
The only saving grace here is that John Bolton has no real power, so even...
Until Romney gets elected.
Then he'll have real power, no question.
And so will Robert Bork, who heads Romney's Judicial Review Committee.
Man, if there's any question in your mind about who to vote for president, look at the people around them.
I mean, you know, I thought the only way Romney could win is he goes through the primary, says all those terrible things, and he does do the Etch-a-Sketch, and he does start talking about taking some of the more moderate positions that he used to take. But whew, these are one extremist crowd, but that's almost all they have left in the party.
I think there's a little chink in the armor these days. You know, he has lately been saying he has been getting away more with touting his Massachusetts health care plan or making a few more moderate statements. And I think it's because he's doing so badly in the polls that the conservatives are finally saying, all right, you know, okay.
Go for it. We got to get in.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we can run the world again.
Then we'll come down on you hard.
Bomb Iran. All right. Well,
a couple of other little notes.
Well, we do have while we have this administration, we're winning some of these asylum cases for this Mexican gay teacher who said he was persecuted back home because of his homosexuality. He was removed from his post as a school principal because he had appeared in women's clothes at a festival against homophobia. And so the United States judge, it's a risk, you go back. But in the accounts of this guy's story, it says he claimed that he was Peña Nieto's secret lover for 7 years. This is the president-elect of Mexico. And that the president-elect had persecuted him in an effort to conceal the affair.
Could be.
And there have been a lot of rumors about the president-elect of Mexico, who was both called a gay and a womanizer. You know, so there are a lot of stories about him. You could look him up.
Bisexual.
Well, maybe. Maybe.
Hundreds of faculty and staff at the University of Notre Dame have petitioned the administration for a non-discrimination policy that would include sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. This is not the first time they've asked for this, and they have been rejected before, but they are sticking to it and continuing to press for that.
Ryan Idle, who was a porn star in the 90s, his real name is Anthony Donais, D-O-N-A-I-S, you know, he was convicted of slamming his woman lover. He was a gay porn star with a toilet seat, and he was convicted of that, and now he's been sentenced to 12 years in prison. He went after her when, you know, she was breaking up with him because she found him sleeping with a guy, and that was that.
It's an ugly world.
Yes.
But a little beauty was brought into it the other day in Philadelphia, where they officially declared Barbara Gittings Way, and the signpost even has a little rainbow on it.
Yeah, so Locust Street will now be Barbara Gittings Way there in Philly, and that's great. She was one of the great pioneers in our movement, and we miss her.
Yes, we do.
International news?
Yes.
Well, news from the Ukraine. They're jumping on the bandwagon in Eastern Europe there, or at least in the former Soviet republics, and they passed a law to ban the what they call the propaganda of homosexuality. Basically, it forbids you from talking about it.
It's the no promo homo law.
Demonstrating about it.
They passed it on its first reading. It needs a couple of other votes to become law, but it's headed that way.
Yeah.
But good news from Pakistan, where the Supreme Court has ruled that transgender people, specifically eunuchs, are equal and are entitled to free health care, free education. A number of eunuchs had been arrested at a party, and so this had all gone to court, and the Supreme Court said, hey, cut it out. They're people too.
They didn't even have the right to inherit. I think transgenders have the right to inherit here. I don't think you can be excluded.
Well, not entirely. We've had the the marriage cases where the family has come in and disputed the marriage.
That's based on marriage, not on...
Well, but it's they say transgender people have the right to inherit. Not always in this country.
And I don't know who they're allowed to marry in Pakistan.
But will the woman in Hong Kong inherit if she doesn't go along with Daddy's thing? Well, a Hong Kong billionaire man has offered $65 million.
That's real money.
This is why I'm This is why I'm putting on a suit and tie shortly. To any man who would marry his daughter. She's 33. She is
not just marry, you have to win her heart.
Well, she's been with her girlfriend of 7 years, and they are in a civil union civil partnership they got in France.
So her response was somewhat moderate to this proposal, partly, I think, because she works for Daddy's company.
Maybe. It's very cute. Here's the story.
This is Gigi Chow from Hong Kong, who has suddenly been inundated with marriage proposals from thousands of men. But Gigi isn't interested. She's openly gay, and this was what prompted her property tycoon father to offer over $60 million to any man who becomes his son-in-law.
I wasn't angry at all. I was really quite touched, very touched, and very how should I say, moved by Daddy's announcement. I mean, it's really his way of saying, baby girl, I love you, and you deserve more, basically.
Gigi says that her and her father remain very close. The 33-year-old, who has reportedly received a church blessing in France with her partner of 7 years, says her father just can't accept her sexual preference as an open lifestyle.
Well, it's obvious that he doesn't accept his daughter being gay, first of all, but he doesn't accept it as a social statement. He can accept it as a sort of in-the-closet lifestyle choice, but not as a social statement.
She has gotten proposals
in Hong Kong in 1991, though gay marriage is still not recognized by law.
When she came out to her mother at 16, because she was in a relationship with another girl, her mother was banging her head against the wall. But
I hope she stopped.
Here's a good footnote. The mother and father are not married.
Never?
Never.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And she's gotten proposals from Oklahoma, Nigeria, India, Turkey, and Bulgaria, to name a few. And some people are sending her nude photos. I don't know if that's the right approach with her.
Not if they're men.
He himself has claimed to have had intimate relations with, this is the father, 10,000 women.
What did he pay them?
Well, sounds like Wilt Chamberlain.
It does.
More than most gay men I know.
In sweeter news, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, they held a gay partnership day. 46 couples were chosen to register for civil unions and get a religious blessing, even though they can't marry yet, although there's some confusion in Brazil about whether marriage has been legalized in some places, but the government of Sao Paulo is trying to move forward.
We're grateful to the President of France, François Hollande, because he used his time at the United Nations when all the heads of state were there to plea for the universal decriminalization of homosexuality, which should not be recognized as a crime, but on the contrary, recognized as a Sexual orientation, he said. Whatever the hell that means.
But
thank you.
He was listing that among other human rights that he said France will lead the fight for.
Yes.
In Tasmania, where we thought marriage rights were advancing, the Legislative Council defeated marriage after the lower house had approved it. So we're getting nowhere with marriage in Australia.
Rodney Croome from Marriage Equality Australia is not giving up.
Oh, I don't think anybody's given up, but it was a little setback.
It was a setback. And the Prime Minister of Iceland, who was the first out gay or lesbian person to be a leader of a country, is going to retire when the parliament term ends in April.
She'll be 70.
She's, she's not like she's lost power. She probably could get, go on. She's very popular.
They turned to her in the midst of the fiscal crisis, and evidently she's done a good job. And here's one to watch. In Kenya, an out gay man, David Kuria, who was the founder of the Gay and Lesbian Association of Kenya, is going to probably run for the Kenya Senate on a platform of helping people with AIDS, eradicating poverty, helping youth, just general social justice issues. He's wonderfully eloquent about these issues, and he is out and says he's, not ashamed of himself and wants to run for political office. It's great.
Pope Benedict is not out. And he says the family is, just in his recent speech, the family is threatened in many places by a defective conception of human nature, and essentially, implying that, we're not fully developed human beings and all this kind of stuff. And you want to talk about abuse coming from a quote-unquote moral leader, who knows better, being gay himself.
And presiding over
the gayest clergy in any religion in the world.
Gayest organization in the world.
Right. It's outrageous.
I think we have more straight people working for gay organizations than he has.
All right.
Just a guess.
All right.
AIDS news?
Well, they finally did a study on soldiers and the impact of HIV and of Don't Ask, Don't Tell on
it's a little early to...
No.
Oh, the old policy.
Yes. But and of course it was something that they think, was a breeding ground for HIV because people were so closeted and all that kind of stuff. It was based on an anonymous online survey, and now they tell us that would have actually been useful information in fighting Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Interesting article in last week's New Yorker by Dr. Jerome Groopman, who was one of the original doctors discovering the existence of HIV and working on helping people with AIDS. He talks about, at great length, it's quite fascinating, antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea being on the rise. And says
Japan.
And says that oral sex is a big danger and not discussed enough, and people need to use condoms.
No, look, everybody, once we realized that anal sex particularly was the easiest way to transmit this thing, people turned to oral sex, and yes, it is infinitely less able to transmit HIV, but unbridled oral sex is also leading to oral cancers and all these other kinds of things.
Exactly.
So, we can't just go crazy here. I know we need something, but condoms.
Yeah.
Condoms, mutual masturbation, those kinds of things.
But the big warning of the week is about meningitis.
Oh.
The New York City Department of Health and other places have warned of a meningitis outbreak in men who have sex with men.
No, it's not new either. It's been going on for a while. And they're just sort of warning us about it now.
And it is particularly seen in men who are HIV positive. This is a severe, deadly bacterial infection. They don't have a huge number of cases, but certainly a substantial enough number to be noticing it, and a substantial number of those people have died.
And they were going to, Toronto and Chicago have gone ahead and, ordered up vaccines. New York has not.
There is a preventive vaccine that people can take. You should consider talking to your physician about the meningitis preventive vaccine. And if you have symptoms, which include high fever, headache, stiff neck, rash, you should check that out immediately. Do not let those symptoms go unchecked.
Get yourself checked out.
Yeah.
And good long article about HIV patients aging prematurely and reasons that they think this is happening. You know, one of the doctors said we have more clients passing away now from cancer or heart disease. It used to be AIDS. So,
well, this is a study by doctors in San Francisco, and what they're looking at is that people are doing well on the HIV drugs, but they are showing signs of aging at an earlier age, which is something we've always known about HIV.
And they're trying to figure out exactly why that is, because they haven't pinned it down yet. Is it the drugs that you take for HIV? Is it things that HIV causes within the system, et cetera? But the fact is, it is happening.
Is it chronic inflammation with HIV? Because the drugs suppress the virus, but it's still there, and inflammation is something people talk about as what makes people sick or makes their body deteriorate.
The likely culprit. But,
Exactly.
but again, they haven't, they're doing more
people are
studies
having
to
heart
figure it out.
attacks and strokes in their 50s and 60s, early dementia, arthritis, cancers. And here's an interesting statistic. By 2015, in just 3 years, the average HIV-positive person will be 50 years old.
Because people are living longer.
Exactly.
Right.
All right, entertainment news?
Well, don't have much to talk about. I saw a couple of plays last week. I saw Enemy of the People by Ibsen from the 1880s. I'd never seen it. It was, with Boyd Gaines and Richard Thomas. And, it's about the spring and the town is found to be polluted. One of the brothers says that. The other one is the mayor of the town, Richard Thomas. He says, we're not going to put this in the paper. And it makes you think of so many things about that we have dealt with in AIDS and everything else. Public health. And there's these very moving speeches that Boyd Gaines gives as the guy exposing the thing, and not predictable. It's not predictable what he says, and that's why I very much enjoyed it.
I, at the behest of viewers who were a little annoyed at me for making an early call on the new normal, have watched a couple of subsequent episodes.
You are a trooper.
I still don't like it. But I figured something out. It's not a comedy. It's really, it's sort of a gently comic, or trying to be a more serious show. I don't like it on any basis, but it's not the sort of really good comedy that I think Will and Grace was.
We do have some viewers who liked it, and I also saw Adam Rapp's new plays, Anthony Rapp's brother, the out gay actor and singer Adam Rapp, a very audacious play called Through the Yellow Hour at the Rattlestick. It's sort of like New York under siege during a war by Muslims, all that stuff. But whatever you do, don't let the people in the hazmat suits put ink on your neck as you're going in, because it'll get off on your collar.
That's not good. All right, we will be back next week with David Rothenberg.
Yes, I'm looking
author of
forward
a
to
new
that.
book, Fortune Society, and write to andyhum@aol.com to get on our email list. See you next week.